All right. Hello, everyone. We are all here for Daily Cast, day 3 of Rebellion Without Rehearsal. I'm here with Coldlava, Wentagon, and now correctly spelled Janktivist. Um, Here to talk about day 3 of the spoiler season. Thank you all for showing up, and let's. Thanks to my guest for coming on. I'm gonna have. Oh, I didn't spell cold lava correctly. Wow, that was an easy one to miss. Uh, okay, there we go. But yeah, actually, cold lava. Why don't you start by just introducing yourself to the stream? Say, who you are and what your kind of net owner story is. Great. Janktivist, I've got you second on this list on the screen, so I'll have you up next to say a little bit about who you are. Oh my good. I'm sorry, guys. I have fucked up once again. None of you guys have been on mic.
Oh no.
Oh my goodness. Yep. Cold Lava, we're gonna have you reintroduce yourself while I laugh at this being the third season I think I've done this, and still don't have a good system, better system for this.
All right, so I started playing about 2 years ago in Startup. I moved to Standard when Midnight Sun came out, and I've kind of been playing ever since then. You might know me from around GLC if you hang out there. I'm often talking in there.
Fantastic. All right, Janktivist, why don't you go up next?
Yeah, so I started playing in about 2014, but probably didn't make the move to trying to be more of a competitive player until maybe 2018, 2019 or so. So yeah, mostly play standard, but mad respect for startup and all the other formats as well.
Eternal, no. And Wentagon, you're up. You're up last, and certainly not least, as I always say, I guess.
Sure, yeah. So I got into the game sort of right before System Gateway came out. My a friend had tried off and on to get me in, and then they gave me a Geist deck, I think it was, and I was finally like, okay, this is pretty cool. Um, and I sort of fiddled around and started for a little while, switched over to Standard shortly after, and I didn't really start taking it super seriously competitively until I think Worlds 22 or so. But yeah, I used to be in the Boston meta. Now I'm part of the Greater Bay Area meta. Plug for Worlds. Love to see you there. But yeah,
Fantastic. All right. Well, we got a busy day with 4 new cards and a ban list update. So I think probably we'll talk about the first card, and then we'll talk about the ban list update for reasons that will probably become clear, and then we'll hit the remainder of the cards. So first up today, we have the brand new HB identity for Rebellion Without Rehearsal and the Liberation Cycle. It is Thunderbolt Armaments. Peace Through Power is a 45/15. It's a division subtype for those of you keeping track at home. And its text is whenever you res an AP or destroyer ice during a run, that ice gets +1 strength and gains subroutine end the run unless the runner trashes one of their installed cards after its other subroutines for the remainder of the run. And the flavor text is strength in the palm of your hand. So, Hank, I might actually throw to you first here. What's your initial thoughts on the card? Be it the art, the ability, the I don't know, whatever you feel like coming in on first.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So one thing that I think has just been cool with the direction that HB has gone so far in Automata Initiative is, I think, for the longest time, it sort of felt like HB is the efficiency ID, and now we have, and I guess it actually started with the Borealis cycle too. But something like Thule and agendas like ontological, and then this ID and the agenda we'll see I think shortly, both sort of feel like it's taking HB in a different direction, which is really cool to see. It's maybe they can do something other than be the efficiency faction. I guess like specifically about this one too. I mean, the first thing that I immediately went to on this, and I think it's just like the Wayland card we saw, but it has that whenever word on it, which is traditionally the first thing I look to when it's like, how can I break this ID? I think that might prove interesting, especially with the other cards we're going to see today too. But yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to try and build something that's not just PD go fast, PD go burr kind of ID, even though that's sort of been my comfort pick corpse side kind of forever. So yeah, really excited about this one.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's interesting. The whenever is sort of well, actually, this is kind of a true whenever, right? This is a whenever, not once per turn, which is like a rules jargon that we've been seeing a lot to let you kind of say, oh, I can do this whenever, but only once. But this is a true every time you res an AP or destroyer ice. Janktivist, I'd love to hear your takes on Thunderbolt armaments.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it looks like a pretty fun ID. As Wentagon was saying, it starts to explore a bit of a new space for HB. Thule was, doing some stuff with core damage. This with the, more dangerous AP ice can kind of continue to lean into that a little bit more in a lot of ways, which I think is interesting and fun. The question for me for this though is, would I play this over Thule or probably more, for me competitively, like would I ever play this over PD, right? So I think this is a really, interesting identity. I think there's a lot of hijinks that you can start to create with this, resing multiple ice, de-resing them, re-resing them, right, to try to just bulk up the strength and the additional subroutines. But part of me is, sitting here wondering, how does this win a game? How does this win a tournament? And how does it do that better than PD? And I mean, I think we'll talk about that maybe a little bit through some of the other cards that we'll see today. But that's kind of the big question on my mind right now.
Yeah, I am starting to wonder at my own booking. For booking 3, I would say fairly tryhards for a day of a pretty eclectic cards. But I think I think we'll still get some really good things out of this. I think actually I should let Coldlava come in and come in with his impressions of stuff before we diverge a little bit.
Yeah. So one thing just to mention is. About the art, I really like how they kind of have both the people and the tanks in there to really kind of give you the perspective, which, like, in some of the other cards, like older cards like they had to kind of explain how big it really was, but having the people there just to show you that these are really massive tanks is kind of great. As far as its ability, it's interesting. I'm trying to think of what ice are you going to try and use this on? Like if I'm looking at it, like Ansel is some of the stuff that's all you're already going to include probably, so it just kind of makes it a bit better. But then things like maybe Bloop or I don't know, there are some HB destroyer. There's not a ton of HB AP ice, but maybe we'll see some more throughout the spoiler season.
It's funny you mentioned that because the first thing I did when I saw this is I went to Netrunner DB and I was okay, S Destroyer, Z Current, S AP, Z Current. See what's there. I think, if you are thinking about this from a competitive standpoint, one of the things you want to watch out for too is that +1 strength, I think, does have the potential to change the math on a lot of things. So, with Echelon being as popular as it is, especially Echelon 3, something like Jagarundi now at 4 strength is a massive pain to break, and it was kind of already was a pain. And both Jagarundi and Bloop are these AP destroyers that do core damage. So I almost wonder if there's a way to take some of the pieces that Thule got and do something fairly disgusting with those out of this ID.
Yeah,
I did the same thing as you did once again. I went on and I just sort of looked up what are all the AP HB ice and what are all the destroyers. And, there's a fair amount. There's tier, and I'm sort of forgetting what we're going to be losing at the next rotation. But at the moment, there's Kamali, there's Jagarundi, of course, there's Harkle, FC3, Bloop. And the one thing that I sort of forgot to mention that I thought was kind of interesting about this is that this ID kind of opens up the door for splashing some Jinteki ice a little bit more, which might be interesting.
Yeah, chat's been saying, how many times can we res an enemy in a single run?
There's some definite hijinks that you can pull off with Anemone, and I think another one of the cards that we're going to be talking about a little bit later.
Yeah, I do also. I want to quickly get in. Chat's been asking, and I've seen that the Rules Wizard and Rules Nut have been answering questions, but just so that people who are listening to this is an audio medium primarily, the question has been, if you res the same card twice in a run, well, we'll worry about how later, but just hypothetically, right? This bonus should apply to the card both times and stack. So that'll be a thing to look out for if the Janksters want to find a way to make that happen. But yeah, and sorry, Lucas, I was cutting you off. So if you want to come
No,
up.
it's fine. Yeah, we were just talking about, like, someone mentioned importing Jinteki ice, and another one is just Saisaton. If you hit a Saisaton with 3 net and then end the run, that well, 3+ net and then end the run, that could be ugly.
I mean, even something like Ivik, for instance, gets to the 6 strength breakpoint, which is really hard for Cleaver right now, and gets an extra, soft-ish and the run sub. So I agree. I think you might see more red getting imported into purple than just trusty Analytic Void, which would be interesting.
Yeah, I saw chat calling out Vampira Nasa. That does seem a 7 res, 5 strength, 5 subroutines seems like a nice ratio.
Yeah. Turning the other thing I saw people calling out was assuming D-res is also a thing where you're gonna have to try and res multiple pieces of ice. Cheap AP ice or destroyer ice could be nice, and one of them called out was Tithe, just because it's so cheap. And if you turn that into a little bit harder of a gear check, essentially with Thunderbolt, it gets a little nicer. Going from 1 to 2 strength probably doesn't help, but that extra sub is kind of nice.
Yeah, I don't think it. I don't know. Is Revolver 1 strength? Yeah. Okay. So it does matter if people, like, if you're playing against me, like, maybe that's a relevant breakpoint, but I don't know how competitively relevant that's going to be. But Tithe is a nice little call out for being a really cheap. This is now giving your sentry a very cheap end the run, which is kind of nice. Yeah, I think one card we haven't mentioned that if you had missed that there was a ban list update, you would of course be mentioning is Formicary. And so I think we should very quickly say there was an article coming out with Thunderbolt Armaments that said, hey, Formicary is getting banned because it's kind of ruining some design space that they want to explore. And if you can consistently de-res and re-res a Formicary, Formicary takes away a lot of the counterplay to res. Like, one option for the runner is like, oh, I can just run where stuff is already resed, and like you can't make me run, or you have to actually like compel me to run against your unres stuff. And Formicary says, no, I'll just get some value out of moving around. And also its interaction with Manic Arm Skunkworks has been a big deal. But I'm kind of curious.
I was gonna say. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, please go ahead. I'm all set.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say it's sort of having seen now, and grain of salt, I am not a quote old head in Netrunner, but I guess I've seen enough of the NSG cycles come out and compare that to what's left of the FFG stuff, and it does sort of feel like the Managarm and Formicary interaction with how the rules work now is sort of, I wouldn't say antithetical to NSG's design ethos, but it does feel sort of vestigial of a different era of Netrunner. It's sort of like Mati, if any of you remember. Like, I mean, I never got to play when Mati was legal, but that sort of effect is very, very strong, and also leads to just some really weird math during runs. So it does sort of feel like it's had its time, and I like that they're opening up design space. I mean, I'm just harping all the points that Deer put out in their article, but I do think it's really well written. So if you haven't read that, worth checking out too.
Yeah, I think it's also, I'm seeing some people be like, oh, well, why did they make other large changes to the meta? And I do think the ban lists that we've tended to see with set releases tend to be like quite conservative and not as reflective of current standard, and more of like a, hey, in playtest these cards had philosophical issues. And then, we saw with the Automata Initiative release, there was like a release ban list, and then a month later they had okay, let's update standard. I don't know that we're going to see a month later, because we're not having Continentals within 3 weeks of the set being released. But I wouldn't be shocked if we get a ban list in a short time that's addressing more of what problems emerge out of the set. But yeah, John or Lucas, any other thoughts on the former carry ban or Thunderbolt, or should we maybe move on to some other cards?
I'll just say I'm a little sad of the former carry ban, but seeing these cards, I kind of understand it. It was already kind of ugly with the Stegodon, and I could see that getting much worse.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think I don't think that former carry Managarm was too much of an issue, although it was super annoying, and maybe not like a really intended reaction initially. But I think with some of the new cards that we're seeing, especially I think with one of the new upgrades I believe we're seeing, or maybe it's the agenda that we're going to be talking about, or maybe both. I do think that those combined with Stegodon, combined with Forma Carry, and can just create some really MPE experiences, and then also that are just kind of like way beyond the power curve than what was intended for a card like Forma Carry.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think somehow we managed to get through the entire discussion of Thunderbolt without once discussing Stegodon, which not exactly sure how we did that, but so it go.
Yeah. Well, as soon as we get to the next two cards, don't you worry.
Yeah,
that's fair. Okay. Well, with that,
Stegodon is going to be just sort of like a natural sort of annoying complement to Thunderbolt. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
But I think it's really gonna shine, or if that's the word we want to use, when we do take a look at the next couple.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So let's move on to our next card. This is Lightning Laboratory, or as I would probably call it, Lightning Laboratory. It is a 4 advancement, 2-point agenda subtype research, and its text is: when you score this agenda, place 1 power counter on it. Whenever a run begins, you may remove 1 hosted agenda counter to res up to 2 pieces of ice, protecting the attack server, ignoring all costs. When this turn ends, de-res 2 pieces of ice, protecting that server. So I think I started with Hank last time, so I'll give Lucas first shot at this one.
Yeah, I'll say for some reason, up until I think just now, I thought it placed 2 agenda counters. I think there were so many 2s on there. I just read more 2s. With 1, it might be tough, but it could be interesting. Like, I don't know. This feels like the main thing to call out here is that you don't have to de-res the ice that you resed. So if you can get a server that's at least 3 deep, and you have 1 cheap piece of ice and 1 expensive piece of ice, you can get your expensive piece of ice resed. And that could even be something like an archer, since it's all costs. So you might be able to set up some really annoying server with this. And I'm just not sure exactly how. Maybe you need a Jinja to make a deep server work. But
yeah, I was sort of thinking along the same lines. Like, I think you want, if you're really going to get the max out of an agenda like this, you want Jinja, and then you want to have a mix of ice that you can almost cheat to res. So things like pop-up window and maybe rhyme even. I mean, rhyme's sort of stacking with the strength boosting and the strength boosting of Thunderbolt as well might actually be pretty nasty if you can get it all assembled. And you're
Oh
right that
god,
Jinja.
this is starting to sound nasty. I didn't
Yeah.
want this in my HB.
And rhyme, I mean, rhyme you can also it's got that res whenever clause, so you can res it. When the something else gets deresed, res it right back up. It's a really easy target to flip back and forth.
Yo, how do we get an AP or destroyer subtype on rhyme?
Maybe Palangi.
Yes, they run it really nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say, so one thing I actually wanted to point out about the art on this that I thought was really interesting is it sort of feels like the classic image of HB for a lot of HB art anyway is this like very like pristine, futuristic, chrome, sleek, like precision design look, and this is this like rusted, like gross pyramid in some dark cavern somewhere, which I thought was really cool for them to like go along with kind of the darker side of HB with their arms manufacturing is also like here's this like old nasty looking building where evil things are happening.
Yeah, no, I think that's a
Yeah.
great call out. John, I'll let you go though.
Sure. Yeah. So I think I heard this from I think I got this from Gray Tongue Crit Hit D20 a while back when they were talking about design, talking about how 4-2s will very often when you score a 4-2, what they help you do is score out the next agenda. If I'm attributing that initial idea to the wrong person, my apologies. And I think Lightning Laboratory does that quite a bit, right? So you score out the 4-2, and then you can stack some ice, and then what it does is that allows you to score out that next 4-2. In addition, and I think Coldlava covered this a bit already, right? You can sometimes cheese out some very 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 expensive ice that can just then stay rezzed. I guess I think it's really really cool. Obviously, plays really really well with the new ID. Becomes super super annoying with Stegadon. And again, I just sort of go back to the question though, like, is that a little bit too much to try to set up? To create your next scoring opportunity? Is that a little bit too much to try to set up for value when there are other 4-2s that this is still going to try to be competing with that just give you value instantaneously? So for example, off-world office or something else.
Yeah, I mean, and to your earlier point, Janktivist, like what is your win condition with this, and why would you want to do this? And I guess the ID also sort of brings you in a program trashing way. So I might be seeing that it already has some res derez synergy, and maybe if you are trying to trash programs and create a lockout, maybe you're looking at something like Echo, which typical sort of backup plans like Botchless and Boomerang, the more you res and derez this, it kind of doesn't start to work. And you really, if you can get rid of their cleaver, then all of a sudden they have this really difficult barrier to deal with that sort of naturally is something you want to res and derez. So, that's at least where I think I'll be exploring with this.
Yeah. And I think if you can really set up your servers well and set up your ice really, really well, this can really just go way beyond curve with cards like Echo, for example. That's a great suggestion, or any of the harmonics ice. I'm just sort of always back to the question, like, are my card draws going to work out in such a way that I can always consistently try to set that up in a way that feels like it's a stable part of the plan, as opposed to something that is cool when it can happen, but when it doesn't happen, I don't really have much of a plan in its place. If that made sense.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that makes a ton of sense.
An ideal server for this to me is like 3 deep with, let's say, like an Ansel on the inside, a Gatekeeper, and then a Tithe on the outside. So you can kind of res the Tithe and res the other 2 for free, and then de-res the Gatekeeper, de-res the Tithe, and you still have your Ansel up, and then you kind of reset your Gatekeeper for a future turn, which could in theory help you score out the next 2 agendas. But that might be too much into Magical Christmas Land. I'm not sure.
Let's just all slot 3 tiers.
Please no.
Yeah, just I mean, like, hey, if you can get 10 credits of value off of a tier, that's better than an off-world office, right? So
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
I won't drag us out on this card. I think we can move. Oh, actually, I do want to shout out. Jamie was asking for a genetic resequencing reprint. I was saying, oh, we could just reprint Biofrost Array and get the Lightning Laboratory ability again. But
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of reprints, this is sort of similar to, and maybe an upgrade of SensorNet Activation, which is a really old card, but testing mate of mine, Colin, used to be one of his pet agendas, so fun to see something
wow,
like this come back.
I could not have told you that this was a card, and I thought I knew every card in Netrunner, but
Does
Yeah,
Biofrost actually work? Or does it place its counter on itself?
oh, that's a good question. This is probably a little too. You may resolve it once,
Sorry.
or I think you're resolving the ability of Lightning Laboratory, and it says place the counter on it. I'm assuming. Should that say this?
I'd call a judge, but there's already one in the stream.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
The judge is saying you resolve it on the Lightning Laboratory.
Okay.
So.
Folks in chat, I'm just peeking over real quick. Jai and maybe others are talking about Jinja, of course, and I think Jinja, would be a really interesting build with this ID, with this agenda in mind as well, just to kind of make sure that we can stack up that ice, right? So that we'll have, maybe that cheaper ice to derez, to keep the more expensive ice resed off of Lightning Laboratory.
Yeah,
So
that's going to be. I mean, yeah, immediately I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to see a lot of Jinja Lightning Laboratory decks, and I'm just going to have to ignore the remote and keep going. But
yeah.
Last point I'll make on this one is I'm really excited for the alt arts that have Labrador Retrievers with lightning bolts on them.
oh, nice, yeah. I'm also expecting at least one Doc Brown reference. So. Okay. Well, let's talk about the last HB card, and to me, probably this card I feel like is maybe the reason I think that I don't know why if there's other stuff in the set, but this to me is like oh yeah, you probably can't have this and Forma Carry in the same card pool.
Yes.
So this is Brazilia Government Grid. It is a upgrade subtype region. Whenever you res a piece of ice during a run against the server, you may derez another installed piece of ice. If you do, the res ice gets +3 strength for the remainder of that run. Use this ability only once per turn, limit 1 region per server. It is 3 influence and 3 to trash. So John, I'll maybe have you go first on this one, as it's your turn to go first.
Sure. I'm pretty hype on this one. I think this is a solid upgrade. I mean, this is something I think that is just going to give you or get you value, across any number of archetypes that you try to build or IDs that you try to use. Obviously, I mean, we're thinking of it pretty heavily right now for the new ID, right? Because we're taking a look at it and talking about it. But zero cost. It's a region that you put into the server and then can very, very quickly just allow you to try to score out. I think at no additional cost, because it's a zero res cost, I think can be pretty dangerous, right? Trying to go through like a 9 strength Bran or something like that, or a 7 strength Ansel unexpectedly can be pretty devastating. Now it is taking up that region spot. So in a deck like PD, for instance, I'm not sure if this beats out Tranquility Home Grid, right? But I certainly think, you can try it and you can make an argument for it. And then of course in, any potential Thunder deck that you're making, you're going to be looking to de-res that ice. You're going to be looking for a chance to re-res it. You're going to be trying to score that Stegodon in order to de-res it and, res things another time. So this can be pretty brutal in, a Glacier style or mid-range Glacier style, Thunder deck potentially.
Yeah, I'm just reading in chat. Jai just made a really great point that this is not unique. So, yeah, limit one region per server, but I have my grid on my remote. I have it on a couple of my central servers. And the other thing is, this does not stipulate that you have to de-res a piece of ice on the server that's being attacked. So, you absolutely can start juggling around which piece of ice is resed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is the card that finally gets
as well, which I didn't even talk about.
Yeah, no, it has to de-res a piece of ice. It can't de-res itself, thankfully.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's what I meant. It does give the de-res. It does give the de-res itself, as in you don't need another card to.
Oh yes, I see what you mean. Yeah. It's not saying like, oh, if you've de-resed another card during a run, like do a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe Vovo makes a little bit more sense now. If we're like, okay, I'm planning to res and re-res a bunch on all sorts of places, but we'll see. I do love Vovo. I don't actually know if Brazilia makes it make that much more sense, but yeah, I think one thing I saw is like, well, actually no, I should let Coldlava come in with your takes before I keep going.
I was gonna say, I think a lot of it's been covered by them already, but one thing I want to note is I think this is one of the only easily exportable de-res pieces we've had. I think everything else has been agendas or IDs. I don't know if there's anything that wants it outside of HB, but it could be interesting to try and figure that out.
Even in op, like reset your envelopment. That seems pretty good.
Reset your envelopment, reset your Stavka, and have a 10 strength Stavka. If you juggle 2 back and forth.
Yeah, that's a great point though. I'm seeing, but you beat me to
it. Yeah, divert power is a cheap way to do it, but it is single use. So it's, and it's not during a run. And like being during a run and giving a strength bonus is like a really big power improvement, I feel like.
So another oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say one other we're doing the go ahead. Yeah. I'll just go. I think so, we kept saying, oh, we'll get to Stegodon. I think unless I'm mistaken, this lets you double dip on a scored Stegodon. So Stegodon obviously gives you the opportunity to do a de-res here, but it also has that text that says each run. So you get your one Stegodon scored, and I think right now Stegodon decks have kind of had an issue where the one Stegodon sometimes isn't quite enough to make a difference over the turn, but now like every run you're using this and you're getting your Stegodon payoff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, the Brazilia is once per turn, so you get 2. Like the runner has to run, like would have to exhaust both the Brazilia trigger and the Stegodon trigger, but you can kind of stack them and stuff. But that's gonna be a lot to deal with for sure.
One of the cards that we haven't really talked about with all these just yet is Ablative Barrier. Which I think is pretty interesting with all of this. Ablative is pretty, is pretty great, or can be pretty great with a Stegodon scored, but a card like Brazilia, means that you don't need to score the agenda yet to res it. So if you've gotten 3 other points elsewhere, or if your opponent has stolen 3 points already and you have that threat 3 going, then Brazilia is just kind of a way to continually de-res that Ablative to res it elsewhere again, to get your, Rashidas or something like that back, or to get your defensive upgrades back, or, to get any other number of things back as well. So I imagine that we're going to see some, more Ablative play with a lot of these cards, and especially with Brazilia.
Yeah, every time I try to play ablative, I'm stuck in that. Do I want to use it as an early gear check, or do I want to hold it for that threat 3? And getting an easier T-res definitely helps solve that issue.
And that's been kind of the issue with the card, right? I mean, I think when Ablative came out, my jaw dropped a bit, and I was like, oh my god, this is just gonna wreck. And then it's definitely impactful, but it's not as huge of an impact as I thought it would be, as big of a one as it is. But I think now this sort of brings it a little bit beyond that curve a bit, or can, because it does mean like, hey, look, I can gear check. I can also gear check at 4 strength as well, and then later on I can still make sure I get that threat 3 value.
Yeah, that's a nice combination. Yeah, I think, I have seen people in chat going, oh, you can then also use a blade to overinstall a Brazil government grid. You can't actually do that because the Ablative barrier does have the text you can install a non-agenda card in the root of a different server. So there's at least a little bit of, you don't get to have all of the possible synergies there. But
I was just wondering. So there's another destroyer that we didn't talk about earlier. So it fits kind of right in with Thunderbolt, which is Hakarl, which does have a D-res clause that I believe you could apply to this. I don't know the exact kind of Rube Goldberg machine you have to set up to get those all working, or if there's any value in doing so. But I think if you were to D-res this grid and then re-res it, I do think you could double dip. So
no, sadly,
it's
still the same card.
Yeah, this is one of the weird things is D-resing a card. It still it's like you can't D-res and re-res an MCA and click it an additional time. It's sort of the same idea. Cards do remember their state when they're D-resed. They don't become new objects. So
wow,
it's
today
we're saved a little. It's like one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, a couple of nice rules. There's a couple rules that backstop this from going completely as bonkers as it maybe appears, though. It's we've talked a lot of bonkers things here. I also want to take a second to shout out Kira Nguyen for again knocking it out of the park with a cityscape art. Like this one is just a one in a long line of amazing landscape pieces.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A couple people are just also mentioning the strength swing combining Brazilia and Stegadon, which we didn't say anything about, but that is a pretty bonkers strength swing. -2 strength for the breakers, +3 strength for.
It's a lot.
That is a lot.
Maybe this is the answer.
Since we're not like any longer in the days of breakers being a lot of breakers being 1-for-1.
Yeah, well, I was just about to say maybe this is the thing that finally gets everyone off of Cleaver Buzzsaw Turbine, because you want to be able to, if you're on something like Unity, it's it's whatever. But when you're on Buzzsaw and you're paying 3 to boost for 1, it feels a little bit undoable, right? So
feels pretty bad. 9 strength gatekeeper.
Here's
9 strength gatekeeper, 0.
It was already really tough to break, right?
2 strength, you have like Turbine Buzzsaw out, and this fires, and you're like, okay, I have a 2 strength Buzzsaw and a 9 strength gatekeeper, so this is going to cost me 21 credits to match strength.
Or even I have a 1 strength Buzzsaw and a 5 strength Enigma.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Nasty. I think I guess while we're on this card, we should probably just bring up there are, aside from Ablative, there are probably a few more on-res effects that I'm sure we'll see experimented with, the likes of an enemy. But I think also something like, exactly, ping. But the other one I was going to say that maybe a rushy deck, particularly, like Coldlava was saying, if we're importing this into ops, something like Hofrun, this buys you more uses of Hofrun, which is really good when you're trying to rush out. I mean, once they get both the decoder and the fractor down, it's a little harder, but you might have some play with that too.
I think people have also wanted to have been shouting out Stavka as well. Just a nice little 10 strength destroyer for 4.
So I'm kind of wondering also now then about with maybe the ID and Brazilia combined, or the ID and Stegadon and Brazilia. I mean, what that does to the stock of like Boomerang, Botulus, stuff like that.
I mean, they were already high, yeah, through the roof, right?
Yeah, yeah. So now those just go higher, but the ID does give you an extra subroutine now.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
true.
Well, also, I think bypass effects probably great now.
Oh yeah.
You don't really care about those, and the hope is that we'll see some more of that too. This ostensibly is Mercury's set on the Crim side, and obviously Laser Pointer is great for that already. Even inside job though, stuff like that helps here. So maybe it starts becoming common sense to pack some bypass if God forbid this gets really really good, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, Laser Pointer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Also,
Laser pointer seems like almost designed as a release valve, right? I guess it's only in Crim, but like, oh yeah, you can kind of play this as a cheap like fairy knockoff, right? Just avoid the sentry and keep going.
But I just realized that kind of makes a ton of sense thematically, given that Mercury is kind of like against what's the corp name again? Sorry,
Thunderbolt.
Lightning.
Thunderbolt.
Thunderbolt. Yeah, Mercury was kind of straight against Thunderbolt, if I remember correctly.
Oh, interesting. That was in the some of the lore drops we got?
I thought so because Mercury
Oh,
was
very cool.
the Biroid from.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sick. That's sick. That's NSG doing some good story.
I mean, another way you deal with Thunderbolt, funnily enough, is direct access. Not that card sees very much play, but
It was fun. I think Andre on stream the other night was like, "Well, it's good against Op. It's good against R plus. It's good against," and it's just like, oh wait, it actually is maybe at the point where you can play this just blind because there's not that many like generic value corps anymore. They're kind of all somewhat synergistic. But
Just don't play it in Ken.
Yeah, just don't play it in Ken. Yeah, maybe Shaper does need to be the faction that's left out of this because Slap Vandal, already behind the other tools, also has to worry about strength. Maybe it is finally Orca's time to shine. Plus two for 3.
I will say, I mean, Shaper's also the simulchip faction, so in fairness, Shaper maybe cares the least about stuff getting trashed. Like, okay, great, Orca has deleted my programs, but I'm still getting into the server.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'll trash this. I'll trash this coupon. Oh, look, here's the breaker I needed out of the bin. Thank you so much. Like,
Jeff, can you bring up Stegadon again?
Yeah. So
okay, never mind.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about like the, clone chipping a breaker in during a run where Stegadon is fired, but it seems like that -2 is persistent. That as long as the run is going on, the icebreaker is getting -2.
Part of me is like, oh, I would prefer a design where Stegadon like, took a snapshot in time, said, okay, everything installed, you get minus a strength. But I think for memory issues, there's enough memory issues with Stegadon already. So making it just apply to all breakers is probably the right way to go. But yeah, I think actually we should probably get ready to move on to the last card of the day. Any closing thoughts on this whole suite of HB cards?
I'll just say what I said before, which is it's really cool that again we're getting a set that takes B in a sort of varied direction, both on the agendas that support it and all the supporting upgrades that it has.
I'm really looking forward to players who are much smarter than me figuring out how to severely break all of these things, and then me just trying to copy that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll just say I think we'll know a lot more in the coming days because these 3 cards tell a lot, but I think we need to see a little bit more, and we'll have a much better idea of what's going on.
Oh, and the agenda plus double anemone. I know we had mentioned anemone
Oh,
earlier, and then we hit the agenda, and we forgot to mention anemone, I think, when we saw the agenda, right? So we can start splashing some Jinteki ice again, and
Oh boy.
just when the runner runs the scoring server, just greet them with 4 net damage immediately.
If they're approaching a third one as well, it's 6.
Oh, there you go.
Or I think you can also use the Brazilia grid to derez one of them as well, I think.
Oh God.
Geez.
Am I remembering this correctly? Let's look at Brazilia grid real quick.
Stegadon also lets you do derez.
Yeah, okay, so it's... Oh god, I think this is actually... Okay, so I think... I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so let's say your server is anemone. So I think run begins, you use Lightning Laboratory, you res both anemones, discard 2 cards, do 2 net damage. Then you trigger the Brazilia government grid that says whenever you res a piece of ice during that run, you can de-res another installed piece of ice. So you choose the inner anemone, de-res the outer anemone, and now the runner is approaching the outer anemone, so you get to res it a 3rd time and just do 6 net damage.
Well, is that true? You said you're resing the inner anemone? Because I think you'd have to be approaching that inner one, right?
No, sorry. So I'm saying it's double enemy. You res both of them, right, with Lightning Laboratory, so they both fire at the same time. But then you use the Brazil government trigger is pending on both of them. So you choose the inner one as the one that you're resing, and then you de-res the outer one. And now the runner is still approaching the outer one, so you get a chance to res it again.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's 6 damage.
All right,
so.
we got to add these to the ban list.
If you have 3, can you make it 8 damage? Does that work out? If you res the outermost, you Lightning Laboratories the inner 2, de-res the outermost, re-res the outermost, and do 8.
Let's So Lightning Laboratories when the run begins.
Oh, it's when the run begins.
Yeah, Lightning Laboratories when the run begins, but I think
it's not
so.
Oh.
But
I need my light the fire, but for ice, please. Thank you.
well, fortunately, Light the Fire does turn off Brazilia government grid, right?
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, then no, I don't think it works to 8. I didn't realize it was.
Yeah, I also Binkle Bonkle with the winning comment of, and then you hit them with the Zato Bathynomus, ignore, and then your opponent says, "Aha, I didn't lose because you have 2 grids in the same server." So
Yeah.
we're saved, everyone. No problems here.
We're definitely going to hear some stories about people getting killed though with triple anemone.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to come up here and there.
Eric also coming in with, why the hell does NSG allow this to exist but hasn't reprinted CI? Who knows? But we've got one other exciting card, and I mean, thank you, Hank. Thank you, John. I think Lucas and I are going to just talk about Descent in Op for about another hour.
That's actually not even the identity that I'm most excited to try this out in. I'm thinking, oh man, here's maybe 3 more influence for Big Deal Outfit to play with.
Oh, okay.
I typed it. Really love Spin Doctors for being porous, and this sort of gets you stuff back in a different way.
Yeah, I typed in Nuvem because that was immediately where the synergy is. But yeah, no, you're totally right. Outfit also really likes Descent. Yes, it's a blank card. Oh, I should actually, before we go further in discussion, Descent, a 2-cost, 1 strength code gate, subtyped expendable in Wayland. It has click, 1 credit, reveal and trash this ice from HQ, draw 1 card. Reveal up to 2 agendas in HQ and/or archives and shuffle them into R&D. When your turn begins, you may add this ice to HQ, subroutine, end the run. Flavor text, a little circular reasoning, never hurt anybody.
Yeah, so actually this came up in the Bay Area Slack, I think. So important distinction is that that when your turn begins, you may add this Ice to HQ clause. Does not have any effect when the card is just sitting there in archives. Unfortunately, might be a little bit too good otherwise.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, he
yeah.
says about a card that would enable infinite recursion.
Of only agendas. Hmm. But yeah, it's I don't I don't know if I could like thinking of cards I would want for Ob this set. I don't think I could think of a better card. It's 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 kind of everything Ob wants right now. Like being able to use your spin doctors for non-agendas because you use this for agendas, and having a 2-cost just gear check that you can find with Mavirus and has use later once they have their decoder down. Like, it's great.
I would say odd players everywhere, you're welcome, but I did not have any hand in this card, so but yeah, John, I guess I want to get your impressions before I ask some more probing questions.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not a big Ob player, but I was looking at this and I'm like, I think Ob really likes this, and I'm not 100% sure why, but Coldlava just went through all the reasons that I didn't know how to say, right? So, it does seem really cool. It does obviously also synergize with the new ID, Nuvum here, and we'll see how much. Yeah, we'll see how much traction Nuvum gets in comparison to but I do like that. I did really appreciate the expendable subtype as it came out. I thought that was a really, really cool space to explore, and just kind of glad, as a player to see, NSG continuing to explore that space. Again, I'm not a huge Ob player or anything like that. I probably haven't, you know, um, used the expendable cards all too much, but I just think it's a really, really cool space to continue to explore.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and this has so many little nice things about it too. Like, the fact that it's a code gate that ends the run. That works nicely because, a lot of your cheap ETRs are often barriers. The fact that it draws a card and replaces itself when you're going to use it to expend it is great. Um, like Coldlove was saying, it's a 2-cost end the run in faction for Op. That's amazing. And it even the not that the Op deck really had much trouble, I think, with kind of Trojan and virusy based decks with the Mavs. But this does eat Trojans. You put it back in your hand, and anything that's installed on this is gone. So yeah, just a lot of really nice quality of life things that this provides.
And I
yeah,
guess is this like a maybe the card that goes into former carry spot in
Yeah.
not because it does anything particularly similar, but just because it's a two coster. It's a another little easy ice you can put in. Again, I'm not much of an odd player, so I'm just thinking out loud a bit myself.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
never really
go ahead.
sorry, yeah, you never really wanted to search for the because for the Formicary and the 2-cost slot, so it's kind of nice that you do want to search for this. And yeah, as Jeff pulls up Thimblerig, it's a similar spot of Thimblerig in that it's a 2-cost and just code gate gear check. But I still kind of want Thimblerig for its other utilities of having border controls to move around. I kind of want both. I don't know. I think Descent's gonna be like 2 of in every ob. That feels right to me, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was just thinking like the Templar comparison is really good. One deck that loses Formicary but gets this is the sort of wide grudge work style Ob deck that wants to kind of time when it's protecting various important board pieces for high value runs, and the fact that you can go and protect your urban renewal right as it's about to pop and then use this on a different card a turn later is great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, this is like Descent's very clearly a pretty versatile card. I think it's like, the big downside, is as a piece of ice, it really is only good for like, hey, is there a decoder there? I think every single decoder in the game has a base strength of 1 or more. So they're all breaking this for a credit. Um, but doing two other really good things is probably plenty good for a 2-cost code gate. Um, so yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
This
I think this is really, really important support for slash and burn too. In particular, I think that card was just waiting for a card like this to exist to really find its place, because just relying on your 3 spin doctors sometimes doesn't feel like quite enough to take a risk on having these in your deck, and you never really want to score these out. But now all of a sudden, you have another way to get them back pretty easily.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I
there
think
is a risk. They'll still probably sit in archives for a turn, right? But now, like the next turn, if you can get them back.
yeah, there's maybe the ideal world where like you even have the descent on archives. You like slash and burn fast advance. The runner like runs. You res the descent and then just get to next turn immediately. Pivot away your slash, like get rid of your slash and burn. So
Yeah.
One thing that also hasn't been mentioned in the not for this rotation, but for the future when FFG cards start to go away, having this looks somewhat similar to Drudge Work. It's not quite the same, but it can kind of help fill that slot in decks that wanted Drudge Work.
yeah, no, I think that's a good shout. I think the Drudge Work decks we've seen were pretty reliant on Forma carry, so we'll see if those can survive, and maybe Descent just lets them cycle agendas for longer.
I mean,
But
even if like kind of like Drudge Work, if you're missing your spin doctor, well, pop a Avarice, and then when your turns begin, put this in your hand, and all of a sudden you can spin your agendas back in.
yeah, I think actually, yeah, Coldlava's shout out of like this letting your spin doctors like do recur your impactful cards and Descent recurring your like cycling back the agendas you don't need. I think it's like actually a huge deal because the op decks like just burn through so many cards, and it's like okay, you're often at the state where it's like okay, well, I had to bin an agenda earlier in the game for whatever reason, so I guess I don't get to recur like a border control and an extract or something. So like yeah, I think giving this card's gonna I think definitely make something of a splash in op. I think the outfit call out was also like it is a great home for the outfit where yeah you do want a gear check early, but like that outfit has like some real agenda breaking problems, and this kind of drawing you through them and like getting it's not really agenda selection, but it is in some
You don't
ways
have to
like
import Sprint. You just
yeah
put this in instead.
yeah.
Yeah.
God, I forget that Sprint does see play sometimes.
Yeah, and on the spin doctors getting pieces back, it also helps with Rush Ob's main problem of R&D just becoming too thick with agendas. If your spin doctors are putting back non-agendas, maybe that helps Rush Ob last a bit longer on centrals.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, for all my joking, us talking about Descent Forever, we should probably start getting ready to wrap this up, seeing as it is hitting 7 o'clock here. So I'm gonna, we're still early enough in the season that I'll probably go through, and I'll start from the bottom this time. Hank, what are you most excited about upcoming in this spoiler season?
Oh man, it's hard to even say. I mean, like I kind of alluded to earlier, it sort of felt to me like there was like half of Mercury's package seems to be maybe like held back. And I think it sort of felt that way with Essa as well, where some of your cards were, really important cards came in the back half of the set, and so I'm kind of hoping for that to pan out for Mercury as well.
Cool. Janktivist. How about you? Either cards that have come out already or cards that you're hoping are on their way.
Yeah, I mean, I was really interested in the new Anar cards, the ID, and then the couple other support cards that got spoiled. And I'm not the person necessarily to figure out how to break, Seb or anything like that, but I'm going to be really, really interested when people, really figure out like what the ultra strong, Seb deck is maybe. And I kind of like this idea of not a tag me deck exactly, but like a tag float deck a little bit, right? Because a lot of the Seb's support cards, or a lot of the other cards that came in, are saying like, hey, look, this is going to do a powerful ability, and you're going to get a tag, but you can't play this card if you are already tagged, right? So kind of just thinking about what that sort of archetype is going to look like, but getting a tag and taking it off, does that mean that we're going to try to get comfortable with floating a tag, and is that going to become something that Anarch play looks like a little bit more often?
Cool. And Coldlava, I'll have you round us out.
I think it has to be Atea and Epiphany support. We saw them when they came out last set, and Atea almost did things, was kind of close to being competitive early season. Epiphany never really did anything, but I think they're two really interesting IDs and abilities. So I'm kind of hoping that this set will be able to round out them, and we can have them see some good play.
Yeah, those are all great things to be looking forward to. And, as always, I will be recapping them at 6 p.m. Eastern. The time has shifted a little bit relative to the parts of the world today. I want to say thank you to all three of you. It's been fantastic having you on. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night.
Thanks, Jeff.
Night.
Thanks for having us.
you